You listen to a different episode of The Blue Room with me right now. I'm joined by Andrew Gower, the brilliant actor and also musician with with his own band, Gustaffson, who I went to see at the Cavern Club a couple of weeks ago, and the night was absolutely brilliant. He's a phenomenal singer, and they're a brilliant band with some fantastic music that I'd implore anybody to go and listen to. Not only that, he's got plenty of gigs going on in and around the country, so do check out their website and find out where they are, and please go and see them. He's a fellow Blue, and as we know, we'd love to give him some support as much as we can. So here he is talking to me all about his career.
I was a delusional footballer into the age of 17. So still to the age of 17, I don't know what, I had this idea that some scout was still going to pick out some, unpolished diamond like me, holding midfielder. That never happened, Dave. And I remember the conversation with my mother that I was, going to stop playing football. And then the next thing that came along, I had a really inspiring English teacher who basically used to have us stand up in front of the class and, read Shakespeare. And I was kind of into language and had been flirting with the idea of being in a band at that point as well, and gigged a little bit. And I think the idea of words and stuff that I was written down, then I was advised to go and audition for a school play to play Fagin. I ended up playing Fagin, and then literally 6 months later, I was at drama school. So I got into drama school. I went and auditioned for drama schools behind my parents' backs. And then since that day, it's funny, and I'm sure you have the same, Dave, with careers, especially with careers that you can't necessarily label, and if they have art involved, like music and acting specifically for me, it's still kind of a thing that, when I reflect, it's mad that 13 years later, from graduating drama school, I'm still doing it, and I'm blessed and so lucky to be able to call that my job. And then to add the music into that, the same journey. It's been such a bizarre journey that I've rediscovered the music. So I think, the label Jack of all trades is interesting, but I think it's more just, we get the luxury nowadays to be able to, the world feels a lot smaller than it did do, maybe when I was a kid anyway, especially with these phones, and even the fact right now we're chatting over Zoom. The world feels smaller, and I think opportunities feel like, if somebody nowadays wants to turn around and say they want to be an actor, I feel like it's a lot more accepted within a community, whereas even 13, 15 years ago, for me, it was some shocking conversation I had with my parents. Not so my mum, more my dad, but yeah. So I guess in answer to your question, mate, it was a kind of naive move into the acting world, and then since then it's just been a really enjoyable exploration into what that kind of title is to be an actual artist. Yeah.
What you've described then, and it's where I'd have a sort of comparison with what I did with starting a journalistic career, was I didn't fully know what I wanted to do, which I think that's sort of what you've spoken of there. When every lad, I would think, and well, these days every woman as well, you'd have those desires with the footy stuff. There's very rarely anybody who goes to footy, even these days, thinking I can make this. I'm half decent. I'm getting to play for the school. I'm in the A team and all that. You'll probably heard of this, mate, because you're from up here, aren't you? You're a Scouser. Merchant Taylor School. I went to in Crosby, which is well, I suppose it is nowadays a very big school reputation wise. It's sort of one of these red brick places that you go to, and I found that certainly socially it was really difficult for me, but my mum and dad were really proud that I got a scholarship there, and I'll be honest with you, I couldn't stand it. And after a year, I said, look, I've done what you said. I've gone and attempted to do what you wanted me to do. I don't like because I mean, I'd walk in there and it'd be like, I'd be saying, "Oh, look, does anyone want a game of footy at lunchtime?" and something like that. And they'd be saying, "Well, no, we're not allowed to." And they're absolutely right. You
Wow.
had to be into rugby or cricket.
Wow.
Rugby in the winter, cricket in the summer, and then that was
Mm,
it. Really, you could play, you could have a game of footy, obviously when you're away from there, and also being from I was from well, I'm from Bootle, completely different social class
yeah,
to a lot of people in there,
completely.
which I found difficult. Now, what I got a vibe from what you were talking about then was finding a place where you felt comfortable with in
Yeah,
terms of what you wanted to do, and that not necessarily being something that your parents and family would find acceptable in many ways because they'd start thinking, and I'm guessing that this would be similar to yourself, where you say you want to do something, acting, uh, music, things that is going to come with a financial career on top of what you actually
completely.
want to do. Yeah,
Yeah,
and that to me, when I sort of went to uni to do English and history, and then that's so ambiguous that you couldn't really say what kind of career
totally.
you wanted directly from it. So after that, I had a few friends say to me, "Well, why don't you get into writing, but by way of journalism?" I used to love writing, like you said
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
Ended up going to John Moore's and doing a
amazing.
journalism career. And yeah, from that, I went into radio, which you'll have been to, the Tower, Radio City. I was there for a
Yeah,
few years and then worked my way up to what I'm doing at the BBC now. And I think that sort of thing we've both spoken about there sort of entwines with a lot that you essentially have to do to start your career. So the next thing that I wanted to ask you about
yeah.
is when did you get, in inverted commas, your break in terms of being able to turn to your parents and say, "I told you this
Yeah,
would work out. I
yeah,
told you this is what I want to do, and you guys can shut up now because I can prove to you what I've actually wanted to go and do for my life."
yeah. Yeah, see, I think and do you know what? It's really interesting because one of the best. I think I've said this a couple of times to people, but it always just intrigues me that we're sort of one of the interesting lessons I learned from you know parents asking that and like when did I realize that I had something to say to them and they were going to back it
Yeah,
was a history teacher once said to me, good luck at drama school, Andrew, I hope you succeed, but then again, who is seed? And he was playing with the word of like success doesn't exist, basically. Like, what is success? Doesn't like we don't walk home any day and say hey babe, I feel successful today, here's Mr. Success. We only feel our failures, basically, right? So I think the biggest moments in my life, the biggest shapes I've ever had as an actor or in music is often the no's I get, or when I feel like a failure, because that's what motivates me most. And I think that you know my my dad's realism and my mum's sort of dreamlike quality, both of those attitudes that they have about what I was going to do work for me, because I think it's good to be realistic and it's good to be naive and dream sometimes. So I think it's a nice balance. But yeah, I guess the moment that they took it seriously, I think they came to see a couple of plays at drama school, and I think we all discovered when I was at drama school, especially myself, because I didn't know much about it, is that the craft to acting is way more. I didn't realize, like, it's like falling down the hole in Alice in Wonderland. Like, there's just a real amazing craft and tradition to acting that I really bought into. And because I was so young, I was 17 when I got in, 18. Um, I was kind of like a sponge to everything at drama school. But I guess, yeah, I mean, in answer to your question, when I get my first paycheck, and the moment I told them that I was going to be on TV in an ITV drama, Monroe, opposite Jimmy Nesbitt,
yeah,
as a
yeah.
series regular, the whole family was a bit like, you know, they couldn't believe it, that I was actually going to be on TV. And it's weird to think that kind of uh, that incentives wore off a bit now amongst the family. Like, they kind of consider it as the norm. They kind of ask now, why aren't I on the
Yeah.
TV? If I'm not on for a few months. So yeah, that was a really interesting point where actually, and even myself, I was like, oh, hang on a minute. I've somehow managed to forge a career out of this, because I never imagined doing so much on TV. I was trained in theatre mostly, and that was kind of my dream, to do a lot of theatre, which I have done some, but predominantly I've done TV. So yeah, amazing moment, that initial conversation where I got to tell them that, I've booked a job in a week out of drama school.
Yeah, there's your humble pie. I mean, I mean, you've got a Wikipedia. You know you've made it when you've got a Wikipedia, mate. And your IMD as well. But looking at the consistent work that you got in television, I mean, some of the people you've been alongside in terms of what you've done, did you feel nervous around? I mean, nervous generic word, but did you feel like, wow, I'm sitting next to various people who we're gonna have a chat about this. We both got scripts. We're gonna start talking, and the first thing I'd probably think of in your shoes would be, wow, it's such and such. They got some sort of ego. Do I need to be a particular type of person when I'm in and around them, so they appreciate what I am? And as a growing actor, how this works.
Yeah.
Did you feel that way when you went alongside that sort of thing, when you turned up on the set, when you did interviews?
That's a good question. I think initially the big thing, and I'm pretty sure that that you had this when you started your first job in journalism. I think it takes a while to realize that everybody in life, I say this a lot, is kind of pardon my French, but bullshitting a little bit. We all just bullshit. I think we bullshit, but as we bullshit initially, we then discover that we can learn on the job. And I think it's interesting. I even think about the Canary Wharf bankers or the Wall Street bankers who have their briefcases, and inside the briefcases is nothing but a pack of tissues, but they hold the briefcase because it's a prop, and it makes them feel like they're part of the job, and they have their costume on as well. And I think what I was so lucky, especially on my first job out of drama school, that and on jobs since then, I think when it comes down to it, a lot of people, it's about the work, right? And of course you're going to meet ego, and I think ego sometimes in work is underestimated. I think ego in the right way can be shaped and used as a good energy. I
suppose confidence is the word, as opposed to ego.
Yeah, but even playing on the word ego, I mean, I've looked. It's interesting. I was reading a book for this job because I was playing quite an egotistical person, and actually the word ego is misconstrued amongst amongst society. I mean, it still terrifies me when I meet somebody with a massive ego, and I like to avoid it. But ultimately, I think nerves and ego can be used in the right way, and that energy you get from that. If you I've always just been fascinated about the work and not so into the red carpet shots and all that sort of stuff. It's more about, when I'm on set, everybody on that set is an actor, and it's about the work and making that scene that day the best it can possibly be, and respecting the camera team. And because you're only as strong as your weakest link, quite similar to a starting 11, and like footballers, you see, the respect for the kit man and the respect for the people in charge of the pitch. You should have respect for everybody within the institution, and that's the same with acting. It's I've been lucky to be on sets where everybody's there for the work, and there's only been one or two where I've not had that. So yeah, I think in answer to your question, Dave, that's the kind of response I had initially, and dealt with maybe TV personalities that I'd watched as a kid. That's how I kind of channel that energy, whether it's nerves or whatever. I try and make it all about the work.
Did you ever feel you had to change as a person? Because that'd be a dilemma for me, and it certainly was a dilemma for me, given working with people who've had a media or journalistic career for decades beyond me. coming along as a youngster when I wanted to do all this stuff, and that's where it felt extra competitive for me, because I wouldn't go as far as saying a lot of people are rude. Obviously, a few people would always be that way, but that was because they were institutionalized in what they're doing.
Yeah.
Did you find you had to change as a person as you continued this journey?
I mean, that's a great question, that, mate. I mean, I've had initially when I was at drama school, I had an amazing voice tutor who was from Australia, an Australian voice tutor, amazing. She was incredible, but she was very hard, and she told me that nobody can play Romeo with a Scouse accent, which which now looking back irks me a lot, because that was my identity, and I'm not my identity. Identity is a big word, but that was my voice, and she kind of fought me to take my voice away. Which is a lot different now. I think the way the industry's moved, the profession's moved. I think people embrace people's natural speaking voices a lot more. But unfortunately, we are still. I think there's always big questions on how these execs of companies, and whether theatre, film, or TV, they respond to to race, gender, equality in all forms. But I think the biggest problem, which I think precedes a lot of that, Dave, is class, and I think because that's built into all these responses, and that's the thing that I guess looking back, the one thing would be, I think her response to my accent, and even some of my peers at drama school, their response to my accent, that was to do with class, and that irks me a lot. That does irk me. And I guess, maybe one thing going back, that would be something that I wish I'd have maybe opposed a little bit, or been able to articulate myself a little bit more about that. But I mean, that it's interesting. It's interesting to see, because I think every actor needs to be able to be like a neutral state. So then they work out where they are, and then you can find and put your headspace into other characters and people. But I think that's one thing that I'm glad hopefully we can keep pushing towards, because I think unfortunately in my profession, people who are born with a silver spoon in their mouths are still kind of in charge of the profession, and I think that needs to change, and then the rest will change with it.
Well, as soon as essentially when I started looking at your stuff and realizing, I think I don't mean to offend you here, but with you being from Aintree, I thought your voice should be much more different given the career that you've had so far in acting, like you've just spoken of there, where you'll have felt, I can imagine, many, many times that you had to change considerably most of the time, even when you're going for roles, when you're going even in to communicate with people that you're working with. Because I mean, I speaking for myself, I've had to do that as well, where you walk into a room where you need to impress somebody, or even just start a conversation. Now, talking like a Scouser, which you sort of mentioned then, felt like a real step back from anybody else who went for this sort of thing. People from London, people from foreign countries and things like that. When I walked into a room, even at university, when you're with a lot of people, your peers also come in there, also professors and things like that, where you feel like you have to take a step up. Again, in the commas, that you have to speak a particular way in order to gain an edge, or to get a level field in a room. I mean, I still feel it today walking around the BBC with certain people. And that's essentially why the Blue Room is what it is these days, because it feels like obviously we can be ourselves when we're doing Everton-related stuff, and particularly this as well. We're talking right now like a pair of Scousers, where it's easier conversation. I can imagine from when you started this and when you started getting work, and then up to around now with what you're doing, which we'll discuss in a bit as well. Do you feel that that's changed much at all? Do you feel as if you have to voice yourself differently, and maybe not just in a voice capacity, but also as a person, the way you come out when you go into gigs, work, when you're getting any sort of anything along that in the public eye? Do you feel you have to speak differently?
Well, I was told at drama, as I just said there, I was told at drama school that I potentially might never play anybody from, you know, the upper classes, or, you know, RP as we call it, or the gentrified classes.
But that's a real slap in the face.
It is. And then
back then that must have been
it was. Yeah. I mean
eye-opener.
But the interesting thing, Dave, that then inspired me to I've probably got to a point in my career where I struggle to get seen now for some. I've never filmed in my home city of Liverpool. I've played a Scouser once in a Black Mirror role, where the director just happened to be obsessed with the Beatles. So in a sense, mate, this is the thing, is like, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, like sometimes our no's and the resistance we get from people are the thing that inspire us most. And without that drama teacher, voice teacher telling me that, maybe I'd have never have done it, right? In a sense, I completely agree with you that, yeah, going into a room, especially now, people are obsessed with sort of street casting, and which can be fantastic, and they want people to be exactly who the character is, whether that's stuff like with Eddie Redmayne playing a transgender character in the Danish Girl. That won't happen anymore, because there's this real thing of, let's get people who are actually from that community, or somebody who's like that. So in a sense, the challenge sometimes as an actor is I have to go in the room and convince them that I'm that. And I've had those moments where I've been on a set and somebody's mentioned, having a bed chamber assistant to me and staff in my house back at home, and I'm like, I'm from Liverpool, mate, and the whole castle's crumbled down when they realised I'm not sort of a the gentry class, which I love, and I love that, because at the end of the day, like I'm fascinated with thinking like other people, and really getting into the headspace of different people. And I think that's the job of an actor, is to convince people that you're actually thinking and behaving like another person. But that again, this obsession with everybody being the exact thing that they are on screen, that takes away the joy and the opportunity for actors to really tell stories. Because if I was from the landed class, if I did have a butler growing up and I was like the son of a duke, maybe I wouldn't be able to see that character from afar. If you're too in it, you can't. It's like you can't see the wood from the trees. You're in it. Whereas sometimes as an artist, like the best musicians, if you sit on top of stuff, you can see the music or the character for what it is, and you can give, I think personally, a better performance.
There's a real irony with that, because you can see the trees for what they are by having that social side of life, whereas, like you said, people I can expect from higher class, for want of a better term again, that if they get those privileges of being able to get work faster, easier, when that sort of thing happens, they won't have witnessed the experience you'd have gained, which will have benefited what you're actually doing as an actor as well. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, because I'll delete this bit as well, because we've got 5 minutes until I send the other one, mate. We can go and get a cuppa or whatever. Was see a class in a different way of who you've been an actor alongside. Looking at some of the people who you've worked alongside. I mean, you're looking at the creme de la creme of that. I mean, did you feel a nervousness with all of that when you first met them? And I suppose telling what you can tell of the experience you've had, because obviously there's certain things you wouldn't want to say publicly, but who was the first one where you looked in and went, wow, I didn't realize this is it now. I'll go and approach them, say hello. Who did you alongside you feel that was easier than what you thought? Your impression of them before you went and met them?
Easier than what I thought. I mean, to be honest with you, Dave, I as an actor, it's weirdly it's not necessarily the actors who make me as I mentioned before, they don't make me as nervous as, say, a director. I think one of the biggest two ones that jump to mind is John Hillcott, the director, who directed me in the Black Mirror episode I mentioned, who's directed The Road and some of my favorite films of all time with Viggo Mortensen. That film just sprung to mind. And then Paul McGuigan, who did the original Sherlock series, and Lucky Number 11 and Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. These directors, for me, as I always had a list, an ever-growing list, which I take in year out and add to and maybe subtract from, of people I want to work with. And I think they're the people who, I guess, make me nervous because they create the worlds and direct the worlds. And I guess they're the people, and I'd add writers to that as well. I met Jim Cartwright, who was actually an extra on the Village, a BBC show I did. He's not an extra, sorry. He's the pub landlord. Amazing playwright. Meeting people like them, I guess that's where it makes me most nervous, because that's where you want to strike off a connection, and you want to in some aspect fit into their world that they see, and the nervousness of being able to actually truly collaborate and speak a language with a director or a writer. That's where my nerves come from. As far as the actors, genuinely, when I'm on set, I genuinely just want to strike up a relationship as the character, and anything else is a bonus. And I think that's something I learned at drama school, is like, it's all about the work. When I'm on set, I'm literally like, of course you want to get on and you want to be a lovely person, but let's just squeeze this scene, whatever the scene is, however big your character is in it, let's squeeze everything we can out of the scene, let's make it as bloody good as we can.
Yeah.
So in answer to your question, the nerves in this industry have come from directors and writers, and potentially one moment I auditioned once to play Steve Coogan's son, and then the day after I was at Heathrow Airport, and we were in the toilet at the same time together, and Steve Coogan, for me and my brothers, as Mr. Alan Partridge, have always been our favorite comedian, and I guess I never wanted to what's it called, I didn't want, be careful when you meet your idol sort of thing.
Yeah,
I didn't want Steve Coogan to hate me, so that was nice. That was nice to know that he approved and said hello to me again at Heathrow Terminal 5.
Yeah. You'll always remember that, mate. That'll be
I will, mate. I know. Yeah, just trying not to say "aha" loud in the toilet.
Just before we move on to your other love, I suppose it is as well, and your other career in music, mate. Tell me about the two things that you most recently been working with, acting wise, and what events you've got coming up with that, and when things come out.
Yeah, well, obviously, a lot of stuff right now with the old strikes, which I'm totally behind, with the SAG strikes and WGA. A lot of stuff that promotion wise and talking about it wise has been a bit mad for actors, and it's really important that obviously all of us.
Sorry to interrupt. Is that familiar with what we witnessed towards about a decade now? Isn't it, when there was a writing strike in the States?
Yeah, exactly. These strikes. This is all in response to, because similar to a lot of politicians taking advantage of us during a COVID crisis. It's translated really to these big corporations that now deal with a lot of the entertainment industry. This is 6 years worth of negotiations, because during COVID, we turned around as a union and said that, look, we want to make content and we can delay the negotiations because people are at home right now. And then in a similar fashion to politicians, the corporations took advantage of this, and the gap between, not just on residuals, the gap between the use of AI and a load of other crazy things that just the minimum wage for actors, and we're talking about people in the middle that always lose out, and also the people coming through at the bottom who've just getting their first jobs. They're taking advantage of it massively. So yeah, hugely behind this. And it's been mad actually, because I've got a show out in the States at the moment called The Winter King, which also comes to ITV in December, which, you know, us as a collective, we haven't promoted because of that. It's an incredible show, directed by Otto Bathurst, who did the first Peaky Blinders, incredible filmmaker as well. So it's his baby. It's a Bad Wolf production, and it'll be on ITV in December. It's the writer of The Last Kingdom, Bernard Cornwell, and incredible cast. And I'm a series regular in that, and Touchwood will be coming back for a season 2 as well in 2024. And then alongside that, I've done just wrapped on the second season of Sherwood for BBC, which is an incredible director. Clio Bernard has taken over this series, and amazing scripts by James Graham, who's one of my favourite writers. So but I've got a nice little part coming up in that. And again, just what a cast: Leslie Manville, David Morrissey, David Herwood. Like the list is endless.
Yeah. I was looking at that before. So and this is probably the last question on your acting side of things right now. How long does it take for you to prepare for the role that you've got there? Just go through quickly the process of you going and getting a promotion in this, getting the role that you've got. Obviously, you've got to go for interviews and various things. Can you just describe that, as in, because I've been fascinated on how actors sort of build a career like that?
Well, ideally, Dave, as an actor, right? I'd want at least a few weeks to prep for a role. You know, a month would be a luxury, but unfortunately, right now, and this is another thing that I guess these strikes are about, is, you know, with Sherwood, for instance, I found out about the job on Thursday and I was filming on the Monday. So,
wow.
You know, and that's very, very close to the bone, but it seems to be happening more and more and more. And I think that comes down, you know, that it's really interesting when you watch somebody, you know, like, for instance, we talk about the late Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker in Batman. I think he found out about the role. I think he had a good 8 months, maybe even 12 months to prep and check himself into a hotel and prepare his role. And then there's other characters. I think the further to the top you get, you can align yourself and assign yourself to a project a year, 2 years in advance, and do the research, which, oh my God, I would absolutely adore that. But unfortunately, right now, you know, and unfortunately, because I think we work best with our backs against the wall sometimes, you know, usually it's a week, 2 weeks, month max I've had to prep roles. And I always come about prepping the characters in all different ways. I think when I finish a job, I always like to say, you know, what have I learned? What do I want to do differently next time? And I take that into the next job, because you're putting the focus, and the way I prep for a role is ever changing. And the audition process is ever changing. You can Zoom people, which I don't like, even though I love chatting to you on Zoom right now. For an actor, I like the communication and the collaboration, and to also know that I can work with the people I'm going to work with just as much as they can work with me. And I think that's the magic about what I do. Is I might not get the job, but if I go in for an audition in the room, that director or producer or writer, they might see something in me that they remember in 10 years' time. And I think if we just do stuff online, or a lot of actors tape nowadays, that takes away the magic of that moment, because it's an industry that survives and breathes on collaboration and communication. of late, that's been taken away. Bit of COVID, but now COVID, is the threatening side of COVID and the lockdown side of it has gone. I think we need to get back in the room, and people should be doing that more and more and more.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because that's exactly what we need to be doing with the Blue Rooms. I'm always going on with the banging on about it with Matt, saying, look, mate, we need to get to a studio. We need to get back amongst face-to-face and things like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I suppose it's easy for in sort of many different ways. It's
convenient,
probably a little
right?
bit lazy. It's lazy for want of a better word. Go on. The one thing that I wanted to ask you about before we move on to your music, you getting gigs comes from who you're connected with, contacts you've got, or agent-wise?
Varied, very varied. There can be a generic casting. There can be a director I've worked with several times. There can be a producer. There can be another actor sometimes if they've got enough clout. Obviously my agent is constantly suggesting, or should be constantly suggesting, that they are.
Hope they're not listening now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, God, thank God they don't support Everton. No, in it that there's a varied amount of ways, similar to most people with most jobs. You can be recommended, you can be headhunted, all of that sort of stuff. So there's no one way, and that's the beauty of it. Is you can feel like you're having a really quiet year or quiet month or whatever, and then the next minute somebody you worked with 20 years ago or 10 years ago comes and you get an email in your inbox saying they want to meet you, or you're going to be on set next week. So it's exciting in that sense.
So I think this is a segue that's quite appropriate now to move on to how that works with your music these days. Because I can imagine that if you were to get offered a gig, an acting role that has been sent to you that you weren't aware of, but you're thinking, wow, I really need to take this. With, on the other hand, you've got your music, you've got gigs coming up and all that sort of thing. How do you prioritize that? Because it sounds like the most impossible task.
Yeah, it does. I think, how do I prioritize it? The music and the acting. I think I'm still, to be honest with you, Dave, I think I'm still working that out, right? The music, really, we did our EP with the Elbow Lads a year ago. That's when our first EP came out with Craig Potter from Elbow. It was August last year. So in a sense, it's only been something that I've had to, and we're getting much, much busier, and we're gigging way more. We've got murmurings of an album, which is wonderful, but it's something that I'm enjoying. I'm enjoying how they complement each other, and I'm enjoying how they link up. Like, we've worked with some incredible filmmakers on our music videos. We've collaborated with actors like Sue Johnson, which, if you'd have told me I'd be doing that as a 12-year-old whilst watching The Royal Family, that Sue Johnson would be in my first music video for my band, I'd have bitten your arm off, never mind a club biscuit, and the filmmakers we've worked with, and the producers we've worked with, and even the people who come down to the majority of our gigs, and we always put short films on at our gigs. So in answer to your question, I feel like it's something I'm still working out, but I'm enjoying doing it. So it's, at the moment, I've not had to choose between a tour and an acting job yet, but hopefully that comes, because that would be a nice little decision to have to make.
It's interesting you say you want it, you'd be enthusiastic about that coming up, because to me, be probably the most impossible question, really, because you've got a band with you as well. You're the head of it. You've got a gig coming up, and you say, "Look, I can't do it today, lads. I've got this gig up the road, and I really can't say no to this." And I suppose the better mates that you've got there will completely understand it, although as jealous as you probably can find out.
Right. I think with Gustaffson, I think that's the luxury of it. Webbo I've known since I was 12. And Dave and Liam and Graham, who's a fellow Blue, Graham, the drummer who you met at my gig at the Cavern, that I think hopefully they'd be very understanding. So that's one good thing.
Yeah, and on this, with what you're doing right now, I'm not just going to say this and make your head even bigger because we're not viewing each other here, are we? We're just talking
No,
to each other. So you could.
I'll watch my head on the way out of the
I
door,
was
though,
going to
mate.
say, hopefully it gets through the door on the way out. But
Yeah.
when I came to see you in the cavern, it was absolutely fantastic, and
Oh, thanks, Dave.
I'd implore anybody to go and see you guys when they possibly can. But the first thing I wanted to ask about before we go through the gigs you've got upcoming that we're
Yeah.
promote to people, how did Gustaffson come about? And
Mm.
how, I suppose, it given, and again, this goes in line with what I've asked you about your acting. When did this chronologically come up and
Yeah.
sort of go hand in hand with what's going on that we've just spoken about?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned to you, I've been writing stuff ever since I was at school,
Yeah,
and I was in a couple of, we and we did a few gigs in around the city, and then I went to drama school and was told that you can't do anything else other than acting because you've just got to keep your head down, which I totally understand. And then I came out of drama school, and as we discussed, was very lucky to be busy in work, and then it got to sort of COVID time, and myself and Webbo had always stayed in touch, and we'd always sort of chatted about how we wanted to get back in the room together, and it was in 2020. I was in Prague, and I just made the decision during COVID. I think we were talking about going to see one of my favorite bands, Flight, in a Glasgow gig, and I said, you know what, like I think I want to get back writing and have some agency over my words, and I've got years and years of writing ideas and poems and blah blah blah, a lot of which ended up in the Jacaranda EP. And yeah, so 2020 we did that. We recorded a couple of acoustic tracks, just myself and Webbo, the guitarist from Gustaffson, which became our pseudonym, like our name, our songwriting name, rather than the Andy Gower band. We called ourselves Gustaffson. And then I was on a film set, an independent film set with which Elbow Craig Potter was doing the music for, and he stumbled across our acoustic tracks and asked me who's producing our EP, and I said we're not making an EP, and basically fell to my kitchen and my knees when he said that he wanted to do it. And then cut to last year. We're in the studio with them. Best month of my life, recording our 4 tracks, collaborating, as I said, with amazing people, and then here we are now with I think we've had our two live singles since then, and in and amongst the gigs. So it's been, again, as I say, just a weird, unexpected journey, and still kind of just riding the wave and enjoying it. We're still unsigned, which is remarkable what we've done, really, and enjoying the agency behind it as well.
Brilliant. Where did the name come from? I meant to ask you that first.
Yeah.
Where did the name come from?
Yeah, so I've got a Swedish great grandmother who married a Scouser.
You mentioned this. You mentioned this.
Yeah, it's a gig. Yeah. Her name was Louisa Gustaffson, and I'm very close to my great uncle. To my great uncle. Yeah, although he's the same age as my mum and dad. Ronnie, and he's my uncle Ronnie, and he used to tell me tales of Sweden and his mother, and it's just I proud of that heritage, especially since we've left Europe as well. That might be my way to hold on to a European passport if I keep calling myself Gustaffson in some way, So so that just there. I never wanted to be. I wanted to, because I believe in storytelling in its truest form, telling stories with Gustaffson. I feel like if I put my name front and center, the Andy Gower band, it just wouldn't serve the justice of it. I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be a sort of a blanket of Gustaffson that we can all, as creatives, come in and out of.
With that as a band as well, how do you get together like that? And in terms of, I know you've got a friend who's a Blue, and it was really good to meet him as well at the Cavern.
Yeah.
He's a really nice guy.
The happiest Blue and drummer you'll ever meet.
Yeah, but I think he's got, for want of a better term, got something to bang, hasn't he, when we don't win? Do tell him that.
I
Do
tell you
tell
what,
him that.
I have noticed for the past 2 years that those drums have taken a bit. I think he needs a new drum kit after our bloody back-to-back relegation fights. Bloody hell.
Oh yeah, that's it, mate. I'll get a quick comment from you on that before we
Yeah,
finish. Right, tell me about what gigs you've got coming up, because as I
yeah.
said, and obviously I'll be mentioning this a hell of a lot more on what
Oh,
we.
bless you, mate. Thank you. Yeah, so
But,
we're at
but
the Pier Hat tonight in Manchester, which is Friday the 22nd of September today, isn't it? God, we're already there.
I
So at the
know.
Pier Hat in Manchester, that is officially sold out, which is wonderful. But there may be tickets at the door. That's our first ever Manchester gig, and then on the 8th of November, which is also my birthday, we're at the famous 100 Club in London, which is one of my favourite venues of all time. And then we've got and then that'll be our last gig of the year, before a few exciting other projects happen in December, which I can't talk about yet, but I'll definitely let you guys know at the Blue Room. And then in January, we're just about to announce our first gig of the year, back in Manchester at the Night and Day, which is a venue synonymous with the Elbow guys, and one of my favourite venues in Manchester. So it's been amazing, really, mate. I mean, those gigs, that'll be in January in the new year. But these gigs of, to play the Cavern and the 100 Club and the Lexington this year, we're kind of ticking off our favourite venues, and the Pier Hat tonight in Manchester as well.
Do you find that difficult to find gigs? Obviously not now, given what you guys are and given whereabouts you're going, if you just mentioned there. Did you find that difficult initially, and basically having to sell yourself with it?
Yeah, I think having the elbow blanket to supporters has been really bloody helpful, and the quality of the EP, like, we're really proud of the EP, really, really proud of it, and that sort of speaks for itself, which is wonderful, and we can send that out. But I think, there is a problem, I think, there always has been, even when I was in bands back at school, with getting into venues, I think. But that's a challenge, and we've enjoyed the challenge. And the nice thing is we've had no luxury of a record company yet, or manager yet, dealing with it all. So it's been a wonderful thing to learn and jump into that and do it ourselves. And I think it will stand us in good stead. But yeah, it is interesting getting gigs. It is interesting. We had a lot of support from the Jacaranda initially, obviously, because our EP was called the Jacaranda. And they've been so helpful. Oh, it's great, isn't it? Veto and Graham there, honestly, they're just amazing people. Amazing people. Veto, who runs the Jack as well, is father-in-law's a big Blue, so I promised him a few games later this year. But yeah, they've been amazing. So I think that's the thing. I think you've just got to, you've got to just keep pushing and sell yourselves in the best way, and we've been lucky that a lot of the venues we've gone to, even the Cavern and the 100 Club, they bought into what we do and have given us the opportunity to showcase our music.
With the music that you've got, which, as I say to anybody, please go and listen to it. Please go and some of these gigs that you've got coming up, because it's a really, really good night. And the band itself is phenomenal. And you talk about getting signed up by anybody. That process itself must be a frustrating one at times.
Do you know what? I've had an agent since I left drama school, so in a sense, the reason why I did this, that's for acting, obviously, my acting agent. So in a sense, the reason, as I said, why I did this was for the agency, and I think the right manager, and it's so important. As we know with the tales of Brian Epstein, he was the fifth Beatle, Brian Epstein, the Beatles manager. And I think it's so important to collaborate with the right people, and the right people always come at the right time. We've been lucky, we've had conversations, but I think the right type of manager and the right type of record company will always present itself, or it won't. And I think that's, I'm enjoying that. So I see that not as I think it's a wonderful thing that we've managed to work with some of our favorite musicians and collaborate with some of the best producers and at the best venues without them. And I think whoever comes in should add to that, which is wonderful.
I mean, what, you're 3 years in? I mean,
no. I mean, no. This a year in really since
year in, yeah.
Year in really. Yeah. I mean, me and Webbo have been writing music since I'd say 2020, but
Yeah.
as a sort of band, as a 5-piece with Liam, Graham, and Dave, and Webbo and myself. It's been official. It's been like officially just over a year, which is ridiculous.
It really is to get that level to where you're at right now.
Oh, thanks, mate.
It's I know that's incredible from all you guys and what you're doing. Who knows where the next level is as well? If you're able
Who
to
knows?
inside the year,
Yeah.
mate. Yeah.
We'll take on the big boss next, and like what's it? Crash Bandicoot. Where's the next? What's the next level? It's taking on the boss. The next level.
Yeah, mate. I missed that game as well. You know, you mentioned. Get it back on a PlayStation.
Get it back. We'll have that's when we actually finally meet in person, mate. We'll have a game of Crash Bandicoot.
So that'd be class. Just before you finish, what you want to promote in regards to music you've got at the moment, music you want people to go and listen to, and some of the exciting stuff you've got coming up. I just have to say.
Yeah, well, I mean, just first of all, huge thanks to you guys at the Blue Room for having me on, because I you know how much I love your show, and chatting to you and Matty and Co, and it's been one of the best things about supporting Everton is although we're terrible at the moment and we need a big overhaul there, the fan bases have connected via the social media world with so many wonderful humans who support Everton, and makes me proud to be a Blue, and Graham, our drummer, proud to be a Blue. And I think what would I like to sort of speak about to round this off? I think if any fellow Blues can get down to the Big Smoke in November, I'd love to see them there. We've got another live single coming out the end of October, which I'll definitely send over to you guys, and then in the new year at the Night and Day. And just the biggest thing would be come down to our gigs.
Yeah,
always helps when people listen on Spotify, and just get in touch with Gustaffson. We're on it's www.gustaffson.co.uk, and then we're on all the socials and the Spotify's and the Apple Tunes. So if any Blues are listening, just drop us a message. We've got a lovely social team who will make sure that they direct you in the best way. And I'd just love to hear what fellow Blues think of our music.
Well, you undoubtedly will, mate, because you just mentioned then about how difficult it is to be Blues. We've always said this, me and Matt, that when we're winning, when we actually do okay, there's far less listeners to any of our podcasts than there is right now when we're an absolute pile of shit. So this is the time to talk to us about this, mate, because people need, apart from all the doom and gloom,
I mean, my brother literally, tunes into these podcasts and fan groups like it's his church, basically, because ultimately it's just nice to hear people talk about exactly what you think, or maybe give you a different slant on something.
Definitely.
But I think we're running out of ways to maybe make ourselves feel better right now, aren't we? But it'll be an interesting one this weekend against Brentford. I mean, after the Arsenal game, that Arsenal game was, for me, just lacked any sort of identity on the pitch, really. We didn't really have a game plan apart from to stop the ball going in the back of the net. So I hope we turn up at the weekend, 2 weeks after the international break now, with more of a plan on the page, because we need to start picking up, regardless of everything that's happened up on the pitch. We need to start picking up points. And dare I say it, Dyche needs to start making the team play, and make us effective. Like it's 11 against 11 on a pitch, and we've nearly got our best 11. So let's make use of it and get at teams and make them fight for a result just as much as we are, because we're not getting at teams at the moment at all.
It's interesting you say that, because the one after this is Luton at home next week, virtually next week. That is a 6-pointer already, as the Sheffield United away game was as well, mate. So I'm petrified of getting cut adrift, because you look at the way we are, and I mean, it needs a huge job from everybody there, from Sean Dyche downwards, if we were to get cut adrift, mate, it'd make you much more worried about the issues that we've just been able to avoid slightly in the last 2 years.
Completely. It kind of strikes us as, you know, you don't want to be that club who just don't pick up points until in and around Christmas and you know, and lose another manager, regardless of what everybody's saying about Dyche. And, you know, the verdict's still out. Of course, the verdict's still out. Of course it is. His record is terrible. But ultimately, it's just like the energy it takes to bring in a new manager and remodel a team that he's not used to. It's just it's exhausting. It actually exhausts me. It exhausts me. And to think somebody else come in and get to know players again for another 12 months and talk about the same old crap. It's that thing that we just, whatever's happening at Finch Farm right now, he just needs to make us an effective team to beat. I said to a few Blues the other week, I said, you know, I was at Fulham last year watching them, and I was watching a few Palace games, and these are the type of, you know, this is the type of clubs we're competing with, even below that probably. And you just look, why are they better than us? Because they've got 11 players on a pitch with a plan. They know who the best players are, and they play like a team, and with a plan and a structure. And that's what we need. We need it. We need to start implementing that.
Yeah, I mean the simplicity that you see from other sides as well is infuriating. When you see other sides and think, well, they're not doing anything extra special. They're not doing anything that's impossible. No. And yet we seem a million miles away from that so often. Right, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Been a joy.
Oh, brilliant, mate. I mean, I've really enjoyed hearing the entwined life you've got into two things I'm incredibly jealous about. But yeah, as we said, just get along. Even if you can't get along, see what you guys are doing, see the music that you've got, because it's absolutely brilliant. Even if it's not your style of music, give it a go, and I'm pretty sure you'll love it and want to get along and see the guys as well, because they're all over the country pretty much as well, so you've got no excuse really.
No excuse.
You know, even if you're getting down to the smoke. And do you know, I was looking at when, just quickly before we started talking around your birthday, we've got Chelsea at home, ironically. So, you know, follow Chelsea back down to the smoke and see what Gustaffson and Andrew and everybody else down there are doing, because it's phenomenal. Yeah. And we'll be talking all the way through to everything you guys are doing. I'm sure there's much more success coming as well. But thanks so much for coming on, mate. Really, really appreciate it.
Bless you. Thanks. Yeah, and here's the 3 points at the weekend, please God.